It's a Tuesday afternoon, and your car makes a sound. Not a good sound. Not the sound a healthy car makes. It's the kind of sound that used to send a cold wave through your whole body. The kind that means you're about to spend money you don't have on a problem you didn't see coming. Except this time, something is different. You don't feel the wave. You pull over, you call the mechanic, and you listen to him say the words, $1,200, and your pulse doesn't spike. You don't do the mental math on which bill you're going to delay. You don't feel the specific shame of asking someone how much they can do it for. You just say, okay, when can I bring it in? That is what $10,000 in the bank actually feels like. Not a number. Not a milestone. It's the first time in your adult life that a $1,200 problem is just a problem, and not a catastrophe. My name is Sam, and today we're going to talk about what actually happens to your life, your brain, your decisions, and your relationships the moment you cross $10,000 in savings. Not what the financial gurus tell you should happen. What actually happens, and why most people never see it coming. Let's start with why $10,000 is the number. Because on paper it doesn't seem special. It's not enough to retire on. It's not enough to buy a house. In most major cities, it won't even cover 2 months of rent. Compared to what financial media tells you to have, 6 months of expenses, $100,000 invested, a net worth equal to your salary times your age divided by 10, $10,000 looks almost embarrassingly small. And yet, the Federal Reserve publishes something called the Report on the Economic Well-Being of U.S. Households every year. In their most recent data, 37% of Americans say they would struggle to cover a $400 emergency expense from savings alone. $400, not $10,000, not $5,000, $400. That means more than 1 in 3 Americans is one minor car repair away from either going into debt or calling someone for help. And the number who could cover a $1,000 emergency without going into debt is barely better. So when you understand where most people actually are, $10,000 doesn't look small anymore. It looks like a different financial planet. Here's the specific mechanics of why that number matters. The average American household carries roughly $6,000 in credit card debt. Average car repair costs in America run between $500 and $1,500. Average emergency room visit without insurance, $2,200. Average cost of replacing a broken laptop, $800 to $1,200. Average cost of an unexpected vet visit, $800 to $1,500. None of those emergencies alone will break you if you have $10,000. All of them combined don't break you. That's not a coincidence. $10,000 is roughly the threshold at which the most common financial shocks in American life become manageable instead of catastrophic. It's not a magic number someone invented. It's the number that just barely clears the obstacle course of things that go wrong in normal life. Here's something nobody tells you about having $10,000 saved. It doesn't change how much money you spend. It changes how you make decisions. Before $10,000, almost every financial decision you make is defensive. You're not asking, what's the smartest long-term choice here? You're asking, what can I actually afford right now, today, without things falling apart? That's a completely different question, and it produces completely different answers. Think about what that looks like in practice. Your landlord raises your rent by $300 a month. Before $10,000, you have maybe 2 choices: pay it or move. But moving costs money you don't have: first month, last month, security deposit, moving truck, new utility deposits. So you pay the $300, even though it's genuinely eating your budget, because the alternative requires capital you don't have. After $10,000, you have a third choice. You can actually move. That doesn't mean moving is always the right answer. But having the option changes everything about the negotiation, including whether you negotiate at all. People with savings negotiate. People without savings comply. Here's another one. You hate your job. The manager is condescending. The commute is brutal. The salary hasn't moved in 2 years. And you've been quietly applying elsewhere for 6 months with nothing to show for it. Before $10,000, how long can you actually afford to hold out? What's your runway if you quit before finding something? For most people, it's about 3 weeks, maybe a month, which means you don't quit, you stay, you smile in the meeting, you wait. After $10,000, your runway is real. It's not comfortable. $10,000 doesn't last long at full expenses, but it's enough to quit a job that's genuinely making you miserable and spend a month finding something better without defaulting on your rent. That is a completely different kind of leverage. $10,000 doesn't make you rich. It makes you the kind of person who can say no. There is a specific phenomenon that financial researchers call financial anxiety displacement. The short version: when you don't have savings, your brain allocates a portion of its cognitive bandwidth to running constant background calculations. Can I cover this? What happens if that breaks? What if I lose my job next month? These aren't thoughts you consciously choose to have. They run automatically, underneath everything else you're doing, like a process running in the background of your phone that you didn't open and can't see, but is still draining the battery. Studies by researchers at Princeton and Harvard found that financial scarcity effectively reduces cognitive bandwidth by the equivalent of losing 13 IQ points. Not because people who are broke are less intelligent, because the mental overhead of managing scarcity is so consuming that there's simply less capacity left for everything else. $10,000 doesn't eliminate financial anxiety, but it does something specific. It silences the loudest alarm. The loudest alarm, the one eating the most bandwidth, is the catastrophe scenario. The "what if something breaks? What if I lose my job? What if there's a medical bill?" loop. $10,000 answers that question. Not perfectly, not forever, but well enough that your brain can stop running the loop constantly. What comes back when that loop quiets down is remarkable. Better sleep is usually the first thing people notice. Not dramatically better, not like a medication changed your chemistry, but the Sunday night dread softens. The 3 a.m. math sessions stop. The specific anxiety of lying in bed recalculating the same numbers you already know the answer to starts to fade. Then comes something harder to name, a kind of baseline ease. You walk into a store and you don't mentally calculate every price before you pick it up. You say yes to dinner with friends without doing the math on whether you can afford to be out. You stop having the conversation in your head about whether you deserve to spend $15 on something you actually want. None of this sounds like much until you realize how much energy you were spending on it. Here's where I'm going to lose some of you temporarily, because this is the part that feels counterintuitive. $10,000 is the first milestone, but it's also the most dangerous one. Not because of anything you do with the money, because of what the money does to your behavior. When you go from zero savings to $10,000, the psychological relief is so significant, so genuinely life-improving, that your brain marks that state as safe. And once your brain marks something as safe, it starts defending that state rather than building beyond it. Here's what that looks like in practice. You hit $10,000. The anxiety drops. Life feels notably better. And then, without consciously deciding to, you start spending a little more freely. Not wildly. Just $50 here, $80 there. You've been depriving yourself for months getting to this number. And now that you have it, it feels okay to breathe. The balance hovers around $10,000 for months, maybe a year. That's hedonic adaptation working against you. Hedonic adaptation is the brain's tendency to return to a baseline emotional state regardless of what changes in your circumstances. You adapt to the new normal. The car repair no longer feels like a crisis. The landlord negotiation is now something you can handle. And the motivating discomfort that built the $10,000 fades. So you stop building. The people who actually change their financial trajectory don't stop at $10,000. They use the psychological relief of $10,000 as proof that the system works, and they keep going. They raise their automated savings contribution the month they hit the milestone. They lock in the next target before they have time to get comfortable. $10,000 is not the destination. It's the proof of concept. Let me give you a thought experiment. 2 people, same job, same salary, $62,000 a year. Same city, same rent. We'll call them Jordan A and Jordan B. Jordan A hits $10,000 and breathes. Life is better. The anxiety is gone. Over the next 2 years, the balance drifts, sometimes up, sometimes down, hovering between $8,000 and $12,000. Jordan A is comfortable. Jordan A is fine. Jordan B hits $10,000 and immediately increases their automated transfer by $200 a month. Not dramatically. Just an acknowledgement that the system worked once and can work again. Over the next 2 years, Jordan B saves another $4,800 in automated contributions. Combined with modest investment returns on the original $10,000, Jordan B has approximately $17,500 at the end of year 2. Neither number sounds revolutionary, but here's what's different. Jordan A, when the next disruption hits, a job loss, a health issue, a relationship ending that changes living costs, has $10,000, and the habits of someone who protects a balance, not builds one. Jordan B has $17,500 and the habits of someone who treats every milestone as a launchpad. More importantly, Jordan B has been investing some of that money. And compound interest has started to do something very small, but very real. That very small but very real thing is the $20,000 milestone. And what happens to Jordan B at $20,000 makes the $10,000 transformation look modest. But that's a different video. If you're watching this with less than $10,000 saved, here's the only thing I want you to take from this. The goal isn't $10,000. The goal is the Tuesday afternoon, when your car makes a sound and your pulse doesn't spike. The $10,000 is just the mechanism. What you're actually building is the version of yourself that doesn't flinch. The version that can say no, can wait, can choose. The version whose brain has enough quiet to make good decisions, instead of just surviving them. Here's the frustrating truth about that version of yourself. You can't borrow their confidence. You can't fake their calm. You can't get there by reading about it or believing in it hard enough. You get there by accumulating the number. Slowly, automatically, consistently, even when it feels like nothing is changing. Because nothing is changing until suddenly everything is. Start the transfer. Set the amount. Automate it so you don't have to decide every month. Your future self is already waiting in that parking lot with a phone in their hand, about to call the mechanic, completely unbothered.